Hey guys, I'm Jordan and you're watching Fixbook. After watching this video, your car problems stand about as much a chance as this laptop does against my hot lead. Now, make sure you stay tuned so you can see what happened to the laptop at the end of this video. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment down below. So today, I'm going to show you how to replace the front brake pads and rotors on your Honda Accord. Alright guys, and here's the tools you'll want for today. A big 3/8 ratchet, a 17mm socket, a flathead screwdriver, a crossbar, or breaker bar and 19mm socket. You also want some PB blaster and possibly an impact screwdriver with a Phillips head screw attachment on it. And then you'll also want a clean blue rag like that. And then you may find it useful also to have some anti-seize, and you'll definitely need some brake grease, and then a set of measuring calipers like that right there. And then of course you'll want a C clamp to compress your caliper piston. Okay guys, and the first thing you'll want to do is go ahead and break loose all your lug nuts. It's going to be a 19mm, so you'll use a crossbar like this or a 19mm socket to breaker bar. I'm going to go ahead and just break it loose like that, and then we'll go ahead and lift up the car and set it on a jack stand, and then we'll finish removing those lug nuts and get this wheel off. Okay guys, and now I'll just show you where you want to go ahead and put your jack and jack stands. And we're going to take a look at this middle kind of crossbar looking thing right here. And we can see right there where I've got my jack in place, there's going to be like a little kind of curving looking thing right there. If you lift it right there, you'll be able to get both the wheels off the ground. And then we're going to go over there to our jack stand, and it's going to be in that universal place where it's kind of got that thing right there. Hopefully you can see it. And it's for lifting the car when you go to put your spare on, so hopefully you can see what I'm talking about there. It's going to be right there. That's where you'll put your jack stands on both sides. Now, I'm just going to finish removing all the lug nuts, and I'll go ahead and take the wheel off. Okay guys, now we're looking at our rotor and caliper. I'm going to bring us over here because we're going to be looking more at our caliper. And the first thing we need to do is we need to loosen up this caliper, loosen up these two bolts, and after that we'll remove this caliper. Okay, so right here we've got two 17mm bolts. I'm going to take a longer 3/8 ratchet like this with my 17mm socket. I'm going to pick up on it, and it breaks loose, just as simple as that. So I'm gonna go for the other one here and just kind of pick up on them again. Oh, and there we go. I've got them both broken loose. Now I'm gonna reach for my long flathead screwdriver. I'm gonna reach in behind here and I'm gonna pry, and you can see the whole caliper here just kind of compressing in. What we're doing is we're compressing the piston right here to come back, so now it's loosened up there. So, and it seems like we're sliding on our slide pins well. So now we'll just go ahead, I'll finish taking these bolts off, these 17mm bolts off. And now we'll just pull them on out, our slide pins. Those are the biggest slide pins I think I've ever seen in my life. And once we've got both those slide pins out, I'm just gonna pick up the caliper and we're gonna set them off here to the side. Now, these brake pads actually are looking pretty good. And here in just a second, I'll show you what you want to do when taking those off, and then we'll also examine our rotor. So what you want to do next is we'll just go ahead and kind of grab our pads here. I'm going to set them on the ground, and they come out just as easy as that. And let's see, I was wondering why the customer was complaining about a brake problem here. It looks like a rock may have got caught in between there and may have been causing some sort of problem, because it's a real irregular kind of pad wear there. But now, as far as finishing this job here, which you guys are going to be concerned with here next, is we're going to check our rotor, and then I'll show you how to remove the rotor. But before we do that, I'm going to kind of explain why you'd want to replace the rotor and that sort of thing, and I'll talk to you here about that in just a second, and then I'll show you how to actually measure this guy. Alright, we have now reached the most important segment of this video. Please do not skip over this part of the video. It's important for you to hear what I've got to say about rotors, and it's important to assure that after you've done your brake repair, your car will be safe to drive. So we've got a few different options here when it comes to dealing with your rotors, you can either replace your rotor, have your rotor resurfaced, or you can keep and use your current rotor as is. Now, first I'm going to go over replacing the rotor. It is an absolute must to replace the rotor if its measurement is below the minimum thickness threshold to ensure your car is safe to drive. What I'm going to describe here in just a second, whether you want or don't want to replace the rotor, that's up to you. Affordability and comfort is at hand. But if it is below the minimum thickness threshold, there's no other way about it. You must replace the rotor. Okay, so now that we understand that, and here in just a second I'll show you how to measure it and be able to tell whether it's below the threshold or not. But now we're going to talk about turning your rotors. Now, there's a couple reasons you could turn your rotor, and that's to keep your present rotor, and you can pay about $10 to Napa or O'Reilly where they have a brake lathe and they will turn your rotor for you. It's a cheaper option than buying a whole new rotor. And the reason you'd want to do that is if you've wore your brake pads down metal to metal and the metal pad is wedged in grooves there and it's all torn up, then you don't want to put new pads on that torn up surface with your old rotor, so you'd want to have your rotor resurfaced, and that's to ensure longevity for your new brake pads. The other reason to have your rotors resurfaced at a parts store is if you're having vibration problems with your rotors. That is, if you're driving down the highway and you apply the brake pedal and you feel your brake pedal vibrating. If you don't like that, that would be a good reason to have your rotors turned. But if you're really particular, just keep in mind that when the rotors are thinner, they're more likely to develop that warpage problem, because what happens is you'll be driving down the road, you'll run through a big puddle of water and the water will splash on the hot rotor and it'll warp the rotor. The thicker the rotor is, or the newer the rotor is, it's going to be less likely to develop this problem. So resurfacing the rotor, if you have that problem, will fix the problem, but it'll come back faster. So if you have the extra money and you really don't want that problem, you can go ahead and just throw money at it and just get a new rotor every time. But if you want to see the problem go away and risk it coming back or not, it may or may not come back, you can go ahead and turn it and get out of the situation cheaper and be more comfortable. Now, the last option is to just keep your rotor and put new brake pads on. That is a very acceptable option, and that's what I do about 80% of the time. Again, as long as the rotor is above the minimum threshold, because if it's not going to be safe to drive. So it's okay to put new pads on your old rotor if it's smooth like this you can see right here. As long as it's a semi-smooth surface, you can go ahead and put the new brake pads on. It's really fine. So those are the three options that you have: replacing, resurfacing, or just keeping your old one. And again, most of the time, most people are just fine keeping their old rotor and putting new pads on top of their old rotor. One more thing I almost forgot to is rotors that cause vibration, they're safe to drive. It's just an uncomfortable thing. The unsafe thing is the below the minimum thickness, but rotors that cause vibration are safe to drive. And also, this minimum thickness number, if I don't tell you exactly what the number is here in just a second, you can find it at your parts store. They'll give you a discard thickness number on your rotor, so keep that in mind too. So the minimum thickness for this brake rotor, I believe, is going to be 21 millimeters. Now, what you'll do is you'll take your tool. It's going to look something like this. You're going to zero them out. I'm going to go ahead and set them over here, and I'm going to set them in a spot, and I'm going to hold them nice and tight right there. And I'm seeing 19.92 millimeters, which is a little concerning. That's a little bit less than we want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and make sure my tool is zeroed out again. I'm going to just check another spot. I'm going to hold them right there, and there we're reading at 20.3 millimeters. So that seems to be a little bit below the minimum thickness. So I would recommend the customer replace this rotor. I'm going to talk to him about that and see if he wants to replace the rotors. It's the safe thing to do, like you heard me talking about just before. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to replace the rotor. We're going to start by removing these two 19 millimeter bolts back here. I'm going to realign the camera here, and I'll show you me doing that. Okay, so here we are at this bracket, and oh, you got your little clip there, and if these guys fall out, what you can do is just go ahead and set them back in there. They just kind of press on up in there, and they should stay like that. And surprisingly, these are actually 17 millimeter bolts. I've never seen that before, the same size slide pins as the bracket bolts. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick up on this guy, Whew, and they're on there pretty good. And I'm gonna loosen up my other one here as well. There we go. And then I'll just run these guys off. And it's as easy as that. We'll see here in just a second about taking this rotor off. Okay guys, so the next thing we'll do to finally get our rotor off is we're going to remove these two screws right here. Now this can be quite a task, and I actually have a video showing you how to do this. You can find it by searching YouTube for Fixbook rotor screw. If you do that search on YouTube, you'll find my video showing you how to remove these tough guys. But I've already done all the tough work, so basically what I'm just going to tell you to do is you're going to take your screwdriver like so, and you'll just remove the screws. And then, wow, look at that. The screw just decided to set right there in the end of that axle. I bet you I couldn't ever do that again if I tried. So once you get both those screws out, then this little rotor should just pull right off. Now,